Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 1v1 series and our 6th match in the second round. If you do enjoy today's video, consider subscribing. Today we're going to be using our 4 different categories to rank 2 killers. The first category is called Equipment. This category comprises a simple aspect of the characters, considering their clothing or armor, their weaponry or lack of, and finally their power. Simple. The second category is called Speed. This category looks at their agility, movement speed, attack speed, and proficiency with performing their power. The third category is called Efficiency. This category details the killer's ability to fight. It comprises looking at their core strength, their resistance capability, and their endurance. Finally, we have the category called History. This is where we look into the lore and identify the things or people that this killer has already previously faced, and make a judgment based off of that on how well they'd perform in a 1v1 as a result of prior skill or encounters. Each category is getting scored out of 10. This is for a total point score out of 40. Same as before, the higher number wins. With these scores and my own reasoning for each of the numbers, we will decide who I think would win in a 1v1 fight. I'm going to try and be as objective as possible and be without any bias. The goal of this series being a search for the strongest killer in the game. Today we are seeing who would win in a 1v1 fight, the Blight or the Doctor. Okay, so our first category of equipment. Let's look at power first, as I think it's quite an interesting one for these two. I would be more inclined to say that Blight has the stronger power due to just how unrelenting and unstoppable he is with it. It seems to allow him to go super powered. He can collide at full speed with objects, fully destroy pallets, and with some add-ons he can even insta-down. Doctor's is also good, allowing him to reveal locations, stop actions, and also inflict hallucinations. Again, I think Blight's potential strength that his serum could possibly give him the edge, especially as both seem to be effectively insane scientists within their own fields. I'm not sure how much the serum would do to Doctor, or electricity to Blight. I think the serum is likely to be more effective though, as it's a product of the entity's realm, I believe, so it must have quite considerable power. However, I think Doctor definitely has the better weapon. Blight's can only really be effective if he hits with the sharp part at the end of the cane. Doctor has a much larger effective area that he can land to do damage. Blight's cane looks to be fairly flimsy honestly, and more of a weapon that's used out of convenience for his posture not being so great. Doctor's bat is further stronger as it seems to be metal, as well as all these little spikes over it, as well as a streak of electricity running through it, meaning when it hits it's not only going to do considerable damage but also shock the person. In terms of clothing, both are fairly even and light on the ground. Blight is wearing a cloak and hood kind of thing, and Doctor is wearing a lab coat and a suit underneath, I believe. For equipment, I'm giving Blight a 7. This is mainly boosted by his power, as his serum seems to make him quite a bit stronger, and from the fact that the speed he can get to with his power is pretty unmatched for any killer. Blight's perks also indicate that he has some kind of favor with the entity, due to his multiple hex perks, but also one literally called Hex Blood Favor, where you can get the entity to block pallets as a favor, I guess. So that's something to consider also. For Doctor, I'm saying 8. His shock therapy plus his lethal bat are a very strong combination, along with his perks, which indicate being in his presence is going to further weaken you and drive you insane. So altogether, I think Doctor has the slightly stronger loadout. Okay, so on to speed. Let's talk about Blight first for speed, as he is clearly the faster out of the two, despite his base movement speed being the same as the Doctor's at 4.6 meters per second. Blight's higher movement speed is 9.2 meters per second when he's running, which is twice the speed of their shared base speed. This can also last for a heavily extended amount of time, as he can bounce throughout the trial to get a more preferable angle or location. I am going to give Blight a 10. It may seem like jumping to conclusions, but the guy can bounce about freely, giving him good agility and doing it all at a higher speed. There is a short cooldown, sure, and also a bit of a stagger, but this isn't enough, I feel, at least relative to Doctor, to reduce him from anything but a 10. He can strike fast, move fast, be agile, and utilize his power effectively. So 10 for Blight. Doctor, on the other hand, I'm giving a 7. He looks to be relatively unrestrained and fairly agile, but not completely, as he does have his twitching and such. His weapon is going to be heavy, and so I think the speed at which he can utilize this isn't going to be too amazing. But he does still manage to match the speeds of other killers, so he still is okay at it. In terms of his power and his proficiency with it, well, like Blight, he is also an expert within his own field, and therefore I would say an expert with his power, which I think is one of his more redeeming qualities for this speed category. So yeah, 7 for Doctor. On to efficiency. Strength-wise, I think it's pretty safe to say that Blight is the stronger of the two, as he's the only one out of them capable of doing things as mentioned before, like insta-breaking pallets, as well as the fact that he can run insanely fast despite having so much weight on him, along with all of the pustules and whatnot. Doctor does show strength in that he can carry his heavy-looking bat and also swing it at the same speeds of other killers, but I think overall Blight is the stronger of the two here. Again, kind of down to the serum more than anything else. For endurance, I'm going to say that the both of them are on equal ground here, as they seem to have high pain tolerance based on just their visuals alone, honestly. Both of their powers are coursing through them and fuel them with what seems to make them somewhat unstoppable, kind of like it powers or fuels them internally. Blight is very close to death at points in his lore, but pushes on despite his flesh literally rotting off of him, and other times where his ribs are jutting from his skin and just yeah. Resistance-wise, we can assume that both of our killers are very resistant just based on their visuals alone. Again, Blight is, well, incredibly blighted, and Doctor is covered in wires, and active ones at that, with electricity coursing through his veins. They both seem to be living in pain the whole time just by existing, yet it doesn't seem to hurt, but instead fuel them both. Again, Blight with his serum and Doctor with his electricity. Resistance-wise, I'm pretty sure they could both take their fair share of damage, and pain isn't so much an issue for these two. We get small peaks of this in the lore, for example, when Blight gets slammed over the head with a pipe, as well as a bunch of other times, but we can talk about that more in history. I'm giving Blight an 8 and Doctor a 9. I feel like Doctor has the advantage here due to having the better weapon and being more rounded, I feel, as a fighter. I think it's still going to be relatively matched though, as honestly they're quite similar. Now, something interesting to bring up for Blight's history right away is just the existence of the blighted skins for each killer, as well as the cutscene we received for a Halloween event a few years back which depicted Blight capturing the Trapper and injecting him with the serum. Each killer with these blighted cosmetics has therefore likely been captured by the Blight before. In fact, it's even said in the Tome 1 lore that he specifically captures the Doctor. This doesn't necessarily mean that Blight is stronger, because it could just be the case that he ran in, injected, and then left or something, but it's certainly worth noting down. I want to also mention that the two of them are clearly both very intelligent and have excelled in their own fields of research, alchemy and shock therapy, I guess. So I think despite their crazed states, they're both going to be relatively good strategists also. Both of the characters overall have relatively similar stories, with both effectively being crazed scientists who experiment on mostly innocent people, and it's pretty grimy and gory. It's more just torture than anything else. I wouldn't say there's a clear outlier between them for who is the most likely to win in a fight, however, as they both just do experiments, shock related, serum related. Neither really means so much, I think. It's more down to how they use these experiments on themselves rather than others. With that said, Doctor's shock therapy is said to make people go into a coma-like state where they can barely move, as well as things mentioned like self-cannibalizing cells, which is just messed up. Blight's tests are more surrounding him finding the Blight flowers, consuming the serum, and yeah, he's just basically a bit of an addict. Overall though, they both mainly only face, if that's even a word to use here, innocent and mostly defenseless people. I think despite Blight having the upper hand, as he may have already managed to restrain Doctor, I'm giving them both a 7, as broadly both their stories are focused on facing other defenseless people, and it's broadly more about inflicting and resisting pain on themselves but taking a ton of it. Depends if we count the Eternal Blight stuff, but I'm gonna say they're even for history. So, this brings the final scores to 31 to Doctor and 32 to Blight. So, Blight wins. This means he will be moving on to the next round and appearing in the third heat. Here's the updated round 2 table. And now it is time for the description of the fight. It was a cold night at Crota's Pren as Blight was searching for flowers, hungry for their delicious juice. His eyes jumped around as a laugh came from behind. He turned to find the Doctor, bat in hand, and a shockwave ready. Blight reacted quickly, sprinting right away toward the Doctor. The Doctor shocked as he did. It rippled across the ground, coursing into the Blight's veins and making him tumble onto the floor and stopping him in his tracks. The Doctor laughed. Blight grabbed a vial, ready to slam into the Doctor, dodging a swing from his bat as he did. He raised his arm shakily, jamming it into his leg, but it went straight through and it collided with the ground. A hallucination. The Doctor laughed once more. Blight grabbed another vial from his pouch and slammed it into the Doctor's leg, the real one this time. Orange bubbles immediately began to grow on them. expanding until he could barely walk. Blight picked up his cane, swinging it round and popping the large orange pustule. The doctor screamed in agony, followed by a maniacal laugh despite the fact that his leg was now coated with fresh blood. He charged forward, swinging his bat with an overarm swing. Blight blocked it with his cane. As they collided, the wood cracked. Blight tried to push up, but Doctor forced down. Blight kicked at the doctor's legs, sweeping him to the ground. He then stood above him as he toppled over, ready to swing himself. Blight struck down with full force, the cane slamming into the doctor's shoulder, the sharp end cutting through his skin and entangling with some loose wiring. Doctor laughed again, swinging his bat. It connected with the Blight's stomach, each of the tiny spikes slashing through the blighted skin, popping some of the bright orange pustules as it did. Blight shrieked, slamming his cane down. Doctor blocked. This time the cane shattered on impact, the shards of it splintering and injuring them both in the process. Blight reached down, injecting himself with the last of his serum, all of it at once. He felt empowered. Reaching down, he grabbed the hold of the doctor's stick. The shock and spikes didn't bother him. He let them puncture through him. He wanted to end this. He tore the bat from his hands. He sprinted away, slamming against a nearby tree before surging back at full speed toward the doctor, who was only just getting up from the floor. Blight ran by, smashing the bat across his head, knocking him back down to the ground, the sheer force and speed ending him in an instant. Blight stood over the lifeless body of the doctor, looking around rapidly. He felt weak. Time to find some more serum. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Thanks, and goodbye. An additional thank you to LHPL3 as well as my other members for supporting the channel.